The Little Sea Maid by Hans Christian Andersen. It is interesting to note that the author was not particularly fond of children, but he had an extraordinary capacity for amusing them, and it was this gift that led a friend to suggest that he write down the stories which he invented for their entertainment. Many of the tales are based on folklore, and many purely from his own imaginings, but all were told with a quaintness, humor, and fancy. The Little Sea Maid. Far out in the sea, the water is as blue as the petals of the most beautiful cornflower, and as clear as the purest glass. But it is very deep, deeper than any cable will sound. Many steeples must be placed one above the other to reach from the ground to the surface of the water. And down there live the sea people. In the deepest spot of all lies the Sea King's castle. The walls are of coral, and the tall Gothic windows of the clearest amber. Shells form the roof, and they open and shut as the water flows. A sea maid can live to be 300 years old, but when they cease to exist, they turn into foam on the surface of the water, and have not even a grave down there to be among those that they love, because they have no immortal soul, and they will receive no other life. They are like the green seaweed, which when once cut through, can never bloom again. The sea maids know that men, on the contrary, have a soul which lives forever, which lives on after the body has become dust. It mounts up through the clear air, up through all the shining stars. And as they rise up out of the waters, behold all of the lands of the earth, and so that they rise up to unknown glorious places, which the sea maid may never know and may never see. When a storm came to sea, the sea maids would swim before the ships and sang lovely songs, which told how beautiful it was at the bottom of the sea, and told the sailors not to be afraid to come down. But they could not understand the words, and thought it was just the storm making noises, and they did not see the splendors below, for if the ship sank, they were drowned, they were sailors, and they would only come as corpses to the Sea King's palace. And the littlest sea maid stood all alone, looking at the sad, dead sailors, and she felt as if she must weep, but the sea maid has no tears, and thus, for this reason, she suffers far more acutely. All day long fish would swim through the halls of the castle of the Sea King to play with the little sea maid. For hours on end, the little sea maid would sit in her garden and gaze upon the statue of a beautiful boy there, dreaming of the world above the waves. When you reach your 15th year, her grandmother told her, you will visit the great dry world. When a little sea maid traveled to the sea's surface, the first thing she saw was a ship where a party was being held on a dock for a handsome prince. The storm came, and the prince was tossed overboard. The little sea maid saved the prince and carried him to a distant shore. The sea maid wanted to see the prince and live in the prince's world. The sea witch said, you must pay me, and it is not a trifle that I ask. You have the finest voice of all here at the bottom of the water, that you think to enchant him, but this voice you must give to me. The best thing that you possess I will have for this request. But if you take away my voice, said the little sea maid, what will remain of me? The sea witch replied, "Your beautiful form, your graceful walk, and your speaking eyes, with those you can captivate a human heart." But in order to do that, she had to give up her voice. She could not tell the prince how much she loved him, but she became the prince's constant companion. However, there came a night when the prince married another. That night she saw her sisters rising out of the water. They were pale like herself, but their long, beautiful hair no longer waved in the wind. It had been cut off.
"We have given it to the sea witch that we might bring you help, so that you might not die tonight. And she has given us this knife. Here, look how sharp. Before the sun rises, you must thrust it into the heart of the prince, and when the blood falls upon your feet, they will grow together again into a fishtail, and you will become a sea maid again."
The little sea maid knew that she could not kill the prince. She bent down and kissed his brow, and gazed up at the sky where the morning red was gleaming brighter and brighter. She looked one last time upon the prince, and then threw herself from the ship into the sea, and she felt her frame dissolving into sea foam. Now the sun rose up out of the sea, and the rays fell mild and warm upon the cold sea foam, and the little sea maid felt nothing of death. She saw the bright sun, and over her head sailed hundreds of glorious ethereal beings. She could see them through the white sails of the ship and the red clouds of the sky. Their speech was melody, but of such a spiritual kind that no human ear could hear it, just as no human eye could see them. Without wings they floated through the air. The little sea maid found that she had a frame like these, and was rising more and more out of the foam. "Whither am I going?" she asked, and her voice sounded like that of the other beings, so spiritual that no earthly music could be compared to it.
"To the daughters of the air," replied the others. "A sea maid has no immortal soul, and can never gain one, except that she win the love of a mortal. Her eternal existence depends on the power of another. The daughters of the air have likewise no immortal soul, but they can make themselves one through good deeds. So we fly to the hot countries, and there we bring coolness. We disperse the fragrance of the flowers through the air, and spread refreshment and health. After we have worked for 300 years to accomplish all the good we can bring about, we may receive an immortal soul and take part in the eternal happiness of men. You, poor little sea maid, have worked so hard with your whole heart after the goal that we pursue, and you have suffered and endured, and you have by good works raised yourself to the world of spirits, and you can gain an immortal soul now after 300 years.
With this, the little sea maid lifted her glorified eyes toward God's Son, and for the first time she felt them fill with tears.